Good morning, students. Today we are going to talk with joints, the different movements responsible for the different joints. For example, movement of the skull. See here, movement of the skull, movement of the this phalanges, movement of the forelimbs, movement of the forelimbs. These all movements responsible for the different joints. Today we are going to discussing about the joints. In the last class we are going to discussing about the that is a appendicular skeleton. Today we are going to start with, today we are going to talk something about joints. You know, joints. We are going to start with joints. The different movements, different movement, different movement, different movement, different movements responsible for the joints. Different movements responsible for the joints. These joints are classified into joints are classified into joints are classified into joints are classified into three types. Joints are classified into three types. Joints are classified into three types. The joints are classified into three types. Based on the movement, the joints are classified into three types. First type of the movement. What is the first type of the movement? The joints are classified into three types. The first classification, it is known as immovable joints. Immovable joints are also known as synarthrose joints. Synarthrose joints. Immovable joints are also the synarthrose joints, are also known as fibrous joints. Fibrous joints. What is the first joint? Immovable joints. These are not no movement. The second joints. What is the second joint? The second joint is known as slightly movable joints. Slightly movable joints. Slightly movable joints. It is also known as cartilage joints. Are also known as cartilage. Second one is known as slightly movable joints. Are also known as cartilage joints. Are also known as these cartilage joints are also known as, it is nothing but synarthrosis. It is nothing but ampiarthrose. Ampiarthrose. What is the other name? Ampiarthrose. Ampiarthrose. Coming to the third classification of the joints. What is the third classification of the joints? What is the name? It is the movable joints. Movable joints. Movable joints. These movable joints are also known as diarthrose. Diarthrose joints. Movable joints, also diarthrose joints, are also known as synovial joints. Synovial joints. What is the third type? Synovial joints. Synovial joints. The joints are classic. Different types of movements are responsible for the joints. These joints are classified into three types. What is the first classification? Immovable joints. These immovable joints are also say synarthrosis joints. Syn means fixed joints. What is the other name of the joints? Fixed joints. Fixed joints. What is the other name of the joints? Fixed joint. Syn. What is the name? Syn means fixed. Arthrose. Arthrose means joints. The study of joints is known as a arthrology. The study of joints. The study of joints is nothing but arthrology. The study of joints is known as a arthrology. One joint joined with connect with the other joint is known as a joints. The study of joints is known as a arthrology. The study of joints is known as a arthrology. Coming to the first one, immovable joints are synarthro joints or fixed joint. The best example for this joint, what is the best example for the immovable joints? The best example for the immovable joints. What is the best example? Is a skull bones. Skull bones. The best example for these joints, immovable joints, skull bones. See here, if you observe the skull bones, immovable joints, immovable joints. If you observe the immovable joints, if you observe the immovable joints, one skull bone joined with other skull bones, one skull bone joined with other skull bones. The skull bones are joined with, the skull bones are joined with, it is a one bone, 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 it is a one bone. The skull bones are joined with the help of fibrous joints. Fibrous joints is nothing but sutures of skull. Suture of a skull. One bone joined with other bone with the help of suture skull. This suture is nothing but fibrous connective tissue. Fibrous connective tissue. One bone joined with the other bone. One bone joined with other bone with the help of fibrous joint. There it is a fixed joint. One, it is a skull. This consists of different types of bones. One bone joined with other bones. It is a fixed joints. It is nothing but fibrous joints. Fibrous joints. For example, one bone joined with one bone joined with other bones. One bone joined with other bones with the help of fibrous tissue. One bone joined with the other bone with the help of fibrous tissue. Fibrous tissue is a immovable joints. The best example for the sutures, it is the skull bones. It is the immovable joints. Immovable joints. Coming to the slightly movable joints. What is it? Slightly movable joints. Slightly movable joints. What is the example for the slightly movable joints? The first example, pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis. What is the first example? Pubic symphysis. The second example for the intervertebral disc. Intervertebral disc. Intervertebral disc. Intervertebral disc. The third example, costal cartilage. Costal cartilage. Costal cartilage. Pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis means hip bones. These are the slightly movable joints. If you observe the pubic symphysis, this cartilage, one bone joined with the other bone with the help of cartilage. That is nothing but cartilage bones. See, if you observe the pubic symphysis, 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 this bone, hip bone, joined with other hip bone with the help of the pubic symphysis. This pubic symphysis made up of cartilage. It is not cartilage, fibrous cartilage. Is nothing but is made up of fibrous cartilage. It is made up of fibrous cartilage. It is a slightly mobile. It is a slightly mobile. Coming to the intervertebral disc, if you observe the vertebrae, it is consists of 26 bones. Each bone joined with the help of each intervertebral disc is joined with each vertebrate. It is joined with is nothing but intervertebral disc. It is a intervertebral disc. Each vertebrate disc it is joined with the help of the fibrous cartilage. It is also fibrous cartilage. It is also fibrous cartilage. If you observe the costal cartilage, ribs and sternum, the ribs and sternum attached with the help of cartilage. What is the cartilage? Fibrous cartilage. The ribs and sternum, the sternum and ribs, they are also joined with the help of cartilage. This ribs and sternum also slightly movable joints. Coming to the movable joints, that is nothing but a synovial joint. What is known as synovial joint? What is the third one? Synovial joint. What is known as synovial joints? Synovial joints. What is the third type? Sir? Synovial joints. Synovial joints means it is easily movable joints. The synovial joints means, see here, if you observe the synovial joints means it is a two long bones. It is a one long bone, the next long bone. It is a one joint, it is a second joint. The both joints, it is a long bone, the end of the long bone, the end of the long bone, it is made up of articulate cartilage. What is a cartilage? Articulate cartilage. This cartilage, it is known as hyaline cartilage. What is a cartilage? Hyaline cartilage. The both bones, both long bones join with is nothing but ligament. The both long bones are joined with one bone, joined with the other bone. It is known as a ligament. It is a tendon means bone joined with muscle is known as a tendon. Ligament means both bones, one joint, one bone joined with the other bone, one joint joined with the other bone with the help of ligament. If you observe the inside the ligament, one important membrane, it is nothing but synovial membrane. The synovial membrane. What is the synovial? What is the membrane? Synovial membrane. This synovial membrane release synovial fluid. Synovial fluid. This synovial membrane produce synovial fluid. What is the function of this synovial fluid? What is the function of this synovial fluid? What is the function of synovial fluid? It is helpful for the lubrication process. It is helpful for the lubrication process. It is helpful for the lubrication process, and also it is helpful for the to reduce the friction, to reduce friction, to reduce friction. What is the third important? What is the lubrication? The next process to reduce the friction. The next one to provide nourishment. To provide nourishment. To provide nourishment to the bones. To provide nourishment to the bones. Synovial joints means with the help of synovial fluid, these synovial joints are easily movable. The first one is known as a long bone. Both it is long bone. Both long bones, end of the long bones is consist of articulate cartilage. This articulate cartilage, the both bones are joined with the help of ligament. Inside the ligament, it is consist of one important synovial membrane. This synovial membrane produce synovial fluid. This synovial fluid, what is the function of this synovial fluid? Lubrication, to reduce the friction, and also easily lubricate, movement, lubrication process, easily movement, and also to provide nourishment to the bones. If you observe the synovial, different types of the synovial joints. 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 What is the first type of the joint? Ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. What is the first type? Ball and socket joint. The second type of the synovial joints. Ball and socket joint. The second one, hinge joint. What is the joint? Hinge joint. What is the joint? Hinge joint. What is the first one? Ball and socket joint. Second one, hinge joint. The third type of the joint. Pivot joint. What is the joint? Pivot joint. The fourth one, after the pivot joint, angular joint. The fifth one, after the angular joint. It is nothing but after the angular joint. Next one, it is nothing but glenoid. Glenoid joint. The glenoid joint is nothing but sedal joint. Or sedal joint. The next one is nothing but a saddle joint. Saddle joint. What is the joints? Saddle joint. What is the first joint? Ball and socket joint. Next one, hinge joint. The next example, pivot joint. The next example, angular joint. The next example, glenoid joint. The next example, saddle joint. It is a saddle joint. Okay, coming to the first one, it is known as a ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. What is the example for this one? Ball and socket joint. What is the example for the ball and socket joint? It is the shoulder bones, shoulder joint and hip joint. Shoulder, you know, shoulder joint. Shoulder joint means pectoral. Pectoral. Get it? Pectoral, get it? The next one is nothing but hip joints. Hip joints. Hip, shoulder joints, hip joints. This hip joints is nothing but pelvic joints. Pelvic joints. Hip joint means pelvic girdles. Pelvic girdles. Ball and socket joint. And also other. What is the ball and socket joint? It is the shoulder joint. Pectoral girdle. Pectoral girdle. The pectoral girdle. The ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. Pectoral girdle. The pectoral girdle means, if you observe the, is a glenoid cavity. The glenoid is nothing but ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. The pectoral girdle. It is a ball. It is a ball. It is nothing but socket. It is nothing but ball and socket joint. It is a ball. The ball is joined with the socket. Ball and socket joint. What is the example? Pectoral girdle. The second example, hip joint. Pelvic joints. What is example? Pelvic joints. Coming to the hinge joint. Coming to the hinge joint. Example for this hinge joint. Example for hinge joint. What is the example for the hinge joint? What is the example for the hinge joint? It is a elbow joint. Elbow joint. This elbow joint and knee joint. Knee joint. Okay, the ball and socket movement, it is all directions. The ball and movement, this movement all directions. But this elbow only single direction, only one plane. Elbow joints and knee joints is the hinge joints. It is movement of only single direction. Coming to the pivot joint. What is the pivot joint? What is the pivot joint? Example, Atlanto. It is elbow joints and knee joints. Elbow joints and knee joints. Next one, the pivot joints. The pivot joints, it is helpful for the Atlanto axis joint. Atlanto axis joint. Atlanto means, for example, the first part of that is a vertebral column. It is nothing but, for example, it is a axis. It is the axis. It is the axis. Okay, it is the axis. It is the axis. Atlas bone. That is the first bone of the vertebral column is known as the axis. Atlanto axis. Atlanto axis. It is the axis of the vertebral column. The first part of the vertebral column, that is nothing but Atlas. The first bone of the vertebral column, Atlas. It is a rotatory movement. It is a slight movement. Pivot joint. Atlanto axis. And also the second example, radius and ulna. Radius and ulna. The joining of the radius and ulna. The joining of the radius and ulnas. Radius and ulnas. It is ulnas. It is a pivot joint. Coming to the angular joint. Example for this angular joints. 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 Example for angular joints. What is it? Atlanto axis and radius ulna, and elbow joints and knee joints, and hip joints and shoulder joints. After the angular joints. What is it? Angular joints. What is the joint name? Angular joints. Angular joints means first example, angular joints, metacarpals and phalanges, the metacarpals and phalanges, second one, metatarsals and phalanges, metatarsals and phalanges, metacarpals and phalanges, metatarsals. Okay, metatarsals, it is the hind limbs, metatarsals and phalanges. It is the forelimbs, it is the hind limb. Second example. Third example, atlas, okay, atlanto and occipital bones. The first part of the vertebral column joined with the skull bone. The skull bone is nothing but occipital bones. Two occipital bones, both are joined with the help of the angular joint. Movement of the angular joint, and also metacarpals and phalanges. Okay, metacarpals and phalanges, they can movement. And also glenoid and sedal joint. The glenoid joint is an example for the glenoid joint. Between the carpals and tarsals. Between the carpals and between the tarsals. What is the bones? Between the carpals and tarsals. What is the glenoid sedal joint? Between the carpals. Carpals. What is the joint? Glenoid joint. Between the tarsals are the joint. What is the joint? Glenoid joint. Next one, sedal joint. What is the sedal joint? What is the sedal joint? Thumb. What is the sedal joint? Thumb. Between the metacarpals and tarsals. Between the carpals and metatarsals. Between the carpals and thumb. Between the carpals and metacarpals. 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 Joints. Gliding, okay, gliding, sliding, angular, okay. Okay, this types of it is nothing but glenoid and sedal joint. Okay, these sedal joints are also known as sliding joints. What is joint? Sliding joints. Okay, gliding joints. What is the joint? Gliding joints. What is the joints? Gliding and sliding joint. These angular joints are also known as condyloid joints. What is the joints? Condyloid joints. What is the joints? Condyloid joints. Ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. What is the ball and socket joint? Example: ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. Shoulder joints and hip joints. Next one, hinge joint. Hinge joints means elbow joints and knee joints. Elbow joints and knee joints. It is a these joints move all directions, but the hinge joints is only single directions. And pivot joints, what is the best example for the pivot joints? Atlanto-axis joint. What is an example? Atlanto-axis joint. Atlanto-axis joint. And also radius and ulna joint. Radius and ulna joint. Next one, angular joint. What is an angular joint? Metacarpals and phalanges. Metatarsals and phalanges. Atlanto-occipital joints. Next, gliding and sliding joints. What is example? Between the carpals and between the tarsals. Between the carpals and tarsals. Between the carpals and tarsals is the best example. Second example, thumb. Between the carpals and metacarpals. These are the different types of joints are helpful for the movements. Thank you.